All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on how to best prepare for an Amazon interview. My name is Eva, and I'm a technical sourcing recruiter here at Amazon Devices. And I created this presentation for anybody who is interested in applying for a job here at Amazon. Um, I did, for the purposes of this presentation, we will be talking strictly about interviews for software developers. Um, all right. In this presentation, you will find information and details on what are the interview stages at Amazon and also how to best prepare for them. I will be giving you some tips and advice on how to go through this process as smoothly as possible, what to review, and how to succeed. All right, moving on to the first stage, which is application stage. So there are generally two ways how to get your application through to us. You can apply directly using Amazon.jobs. And just submit your application. You can filter out locations and any other things that you're interested in. Or the second possible way is to get contacted by one of the Amazon recruiters, people like me, who would message you either via email or through social media. Typically, LinkedIn is very popular, or other social media are also sometimes used, but LinkedIn is, I would say, the most popular one. So yeah, we've got your first contact, and let's say we've got your updated CV, and you are in a position that you are interested in exploring the opportunities, and we would like to proceed with your application. So what's the next step? It's very simple. If you're a software developer, the next step is an assessment, an online assessment. Uh, Online assessment is you can think about it as like a coding challenge. In general, it's a way to help us to get to know you a bit better. It's designed to make sure to measure key characteristics required for success in the role and to help you highlight your coding skills and work style. So it's designed to make sure that we assess everybody in the same way, that we avoid all biases. Everybody gets the same type of assessment. Uh, Once you receive your assessment, there will be a certain time frame that you need to complete it in. This is typically 7 days, can be different, but usually a week. Um, I don't recommend jumping right into it. I think it's much better if you practice a little bit. Practice for 2-3 days, coding exercises on websites like LeetCode or HackerRank. There's a ton of materials. You can find it very useful, I'm sure. And of course, if you practice first, then it's a much higher chance that you will actually pass this successfully. The online assessment takes 2 hours of your time, and it's made of 3 stages or 3 steps, and you have to complete it all at one go. It's not possible to pause it and come back to it later. Uh, First, coding challenge and coding approach. So these are 2 coding questions that you will have to solve and then explain why you did what you did. That's the coding approach. There's also, this altogether takes about 105 minutes. Then there is a work style survey, about 15-20 minutes, and a feedback survey, about the same amount of time. Then once you complete it, it goes through to our system and you will receive an outcome within 2 business days. If you passed it successfully, then typically the next stage is the on-site interview. So let's go to that. On-site interview is the most important and the final step of your process, of your hiring process. Now in COVID times, these are all done virtually. So it's a series of video calls. Before we did it in person. Hopefully, in the future we can go back to it because it's quite nice to meet people in person. But for now, it's online. You would meet 4 people, 1 hiring manager and 3 engineers. This is how it normally works. 4 people altogether, and you will spend 1 hour with each of them. So it's one after another. Each interview slot is normally divided into two halves. So the first half usually is the non-technical part, or we can also call it behavioral part. Second part is usually technical. These can be swapped around. It's not really important in which order they go. This is how it normally works. In the non-technical part, we will be in general asking you to provide examples from your past career, uh, showing us or take us through your past challenges and situations and problems that you faced, difficult moments. Uh, we are curious to see how you handled these, and we want to see if, and if so, then how you are using the Amazon leadership principles to guide, to um, um, to sort out these problems and these challenges. Sorry, I thought about the leadership principles for a moment. Leadership principles are extremely important to review when you're applying for a job at Amazon. It's an absolutely key component of your Amazon interview. Leadership principles, research them, read through them, try to understand what they mean. We use them every day. We use them when we're not sure what our next step should be, when we're kicking off a project, in our everyday problem solving and decision making, we are deciding based on leadership principles typically. So, absolutely key component. Make sure you go through those. In your examples that the interviewers will be asking you to provide, it would be great if you could reference recent situations. It's typically not a good idea to go years and years and years back, as it doesn't show enough scope and complexity of your current role. It is possible, but I would not go more than 5 years back. Um, Amazon is a data driven company, so I would highly recommend to use data or metrics to back up your examples. Data can be numbers, percentages, KPIs, or any sort of other metrics that you use to measure success, or any other metrics that you use. Um, and when you're also when you're replying, this is very important. Try to stick to the so-called STAR method. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this technique, but it's a brilliant technique that allows you to keep your speech concise and structured to make sure that in your story there's a beginning, middle, and an end. Because if you're not familiar, it's very easy to get tangled up in your own story, and then it's hard to get out of there. Okay. And a few more tips here on the behavioral part. It's very important to be very specific. The questions you will be asked will be quite specific, or the follow up questions will be quite specific. So we require from you really specific answer. Try to provide as many details as possible. We want to also hear about your particular contribution. So don't make the mistake of saying, we did this, we did that, me and my team did this or that. It's good, and we understand that you work in a team, and at Amazon you would also work in a team. However, it's important to realize here that at the moment we're interviewing you and not your team, so it's good to give some sort of context, but then talk about yourself. You can say, you can specify that you were a team of maybe 5 developers, and then this particular problem happened, and then you took this action, or you proposed this strategy, or you did this, you did that. Try to say a lot of I instead of we. It's a little tip that can help you to remember to always try to talk about yourself a lot. Also, when you're talking, as we were mentioning the STAR method, so situation, task, action, result, I like to recommend people to also add a little L after that. They're like star L, and that would stand for learnings, because it's important to share your story, but it's also great if you could share some of your reflections on it. something that you have learned out of that. And it doesn't matter what the outcome was, if it was positive or negative, that's not really important. We like to see if people are learning from past situations, to make sure that next time they are even better. Or if something bad has happened, to make sure that next time they know how they should proceed and what should be their next step. Okay. Here you can see on the screen some examples of behavioral questions. Um, for example, describe a time you took the lead on a project, right? Or how have you leveraged data to develop a strategy? Remember, as I was mentioning the data, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Or a question, when did you take a risk, make a mistake, or fail? How did you respond, and how did you grow from that experience? We acknowledge that we're all just human and everybody makes mistakes, and in software development there's a lot of mistakes made regularly. That's how we grow, that's how we learn. So when you're thinking about your examples, when you're preparing some of your examples of these challenging situations, or in general challenges from your past, and try to think of something, an example of something that didn't work or where you failed. We are curious to hear about that. And remember, we would love to hear what you have learned out of that. Here we have some tips for great answers. So I've already mentioned some of these, but here we have it black and white. So, like I said, practice using the STAR method. It's very important. If you feel maybe a bit nervous before the interview, or you're not sure, you're not maybe 100% confident about an interview in English, practice. Everybody should practice. I'm a big fan of practicing. So practice the STAR method. Ensure that each answer has a beginning, middle, and an end. It's very important. Um, Describe the situation or a problem, the actions you took, the outcome, and as I mentioned a minute ago, ideally the learnings as well. Um, Prepare short descriptions of a few different situations and be ready to answer follow-up questions with greater detail. So this happens a lot. So you would be giving the interviewer your answer, but then they would also ask you some follow-up questions because they are curious to hear a few more details. So be prepared for this. Share the story and your reflections on them learnings, no matter the outcome, exactly as I was saying. And yes, specifics are key. Avoid any generalizations. Yes, so that's what I was talking about. Always give us details. If we want more details, we will ask for it, but it's better if you already come up with this by yourself. Use data or metrics to support your example and talk about your particular contributions. All right, so the non-technical part usually takes about 25 minutes, sometimes half an hour, sometimes 35 minutes. It varies a lot. You don't have to trouble yourself with the timekeeping, and this is purely on the interviewer's side. So yeah, don't worry about that. But it's generally the first half of the interview or a half of the interview. Once this is done, the interviewers move towards the technical assessment. So, technical part. A technical part of the interview is usually the second part. Takes about half an hour or 25 minutes, and typically requires you to perform coding and system design exercises. As I mentioned at the beginning, this video is purely for the purposes of software developers. So if you're interviewing for any other role, there might be different challenges to do or different assessments to do. But for software developers, we always have coding exercises and a system design exercise. Again, as I mentioned previously, practice, practice, practice is a key, extremely important. So as a part of your preparation, highly recommend, again, practice coding challenges, because some of the questions that you are asked is not something that you would be doing that you are doing in your everyday work. So it's important to make sure that you are 100% confident. When it comes to the programming language, we don't really need any particular knowledge of any particular language, but typically what works the best at Amazon is if you are familiar with the languages and the syntax of stuff like Java, Python, C Sharp, C, C++, or Ruby. These are the most common programming languages and typically work the best for our purposes. Um, Once the interviewer asks you the coding question style is very similar to what you saw at the online assessment in your first stage of the interview. Um, they will be waiting you to come up with an answer. And I forgot to mention that this is all done virtually using our platform for coding exercises. So this is all done live. Um, Well, once the interviewer asks you the question, it's extremely important to start with asking clarifying questions. This is important because you need to narrow down the uh, requirements of the problem in order to make sure that you can come up with the optimal solution. Um, it's always better to ask clarifying questions because you can get some answers. We don't like assuming, no assumptions. It doesn't usually work. Always ask the clarifying questions. The interviewer is there to help you, so listen to what they say. I highly recommend also to think out loud, and I would like to encourage you to talk them through your solution. So, as you will be writing your code, think out loud, make it interactive. It makes it much more sort of user friendly for the actual interviewer, especially if you're not in the same room, if this is done virtually. Um, and it can help you later on because maybe you were saying at the beginning you were going to do this and now you're doing something else, or you might get nervous, and sometimes candidates can't see what's right in front of them. I think that can happen to any of us. So, yes, talk out loud and think out loud, sorry, and talk them through your solution. Um, in general, you will be expected to write a scalable, robust, well-tested code. Clean code. That's what it's all about. It's very important because these are the main criteria. Uh, Sorry, not criteria, evaluation criteria, but yes, evaluation criteria for your code. So always keep it in your focus. What is also important is to verify your code, test it at the end if there is enough time. If not, then at least mention it. Consider edge cases, validate that no bad input can slip through. Again, we want to see that you think about it from the beginning to the end. It's very important. A very big part of the technical assessment lies in the knowledge of data structures and algorithms. So basically, you will be expected to explain why using these particular data structures and algorithms is the best decision. What are the trade-offs? What are you gaining? What are you losing when you're using some and not others? You can definitely expect stuff like hash maps, arrays, trees, linked lists. BFS and DFS algorithms super popular, and we expect every engineer to have a strong background in these. Like, this is an absolute minimum that you need to know. System design exercise. One one particular interviewer in your interviewing panel will focus on the system design exercise. So the rest will test coding questions. So 3 people will ask you a coding question and 1 person will ask you a system design question. System design can be it's basically a discussion. You will be asked a very generic task to design a system, and you will be absolutely expected to drive this conversation. So it's all about asking clarifying questions at the beginning. These can be about scale, performance, do you need an API, stuff like that. And then you driving the conversation, like where do you even start? What do you take into consideration? You will need to think of both. You will need to think about the high level, which is scalability, customer point of view, as well as the low level stuff like load balancer, databases, and so on. And what is very important, always make sure that your design, your solution would work, could work on the Amazon scale of millions of customers, because everything that we design at Amazon needs to be used by millions of customers at any given time. So scalability is an extremely important thing to consider when you're thinking about your system design solution. Like I mentioned, the technical part takes about 25 minutes, and at the end there is 5 or 10 minutes, depending how it goes, left for you as a space for your questions. So make sure that you also prepare some questions for the interviewers to ask them at the end. And then that's it. Your interview is done. So what happens next? So let's say you went successfully through the interviewing day, and now you're waiting. So what happens? Basically, the panel will meet for a debrief to discuss your performance and make a hiring decision. And this typically happens within a week of your interview based on everyone's availability, but we always aim for doing this as soon as possible. There's a fairly quick turnaround, I would say, because you will hear from your recruiter about the outcome of your interview within maximum 5 business days after your interview. So in less than a week or maximum 1 week, you will already know if you've got it or not. And we've heard from our customers that from our candidates who are our customers that this is quite a revolutionary thing, because a lot of companies keep you waiting, they keep you on your toes for even weeks. And to tell you, with us, it's a quick turnaround. So within 5 business days, you will know. And now, if it is a positive decision, if the panel has decided that you are raising the hiring bar, you would be an asset to their team, helping them achieve their goals, then we will extend a job offer to you. And then you would get a few days to consider, all things, everything that goes into it. And we will be curious to hear from you if you'd like to accept it or decline it. Hopefully accept it. What we can also do is you can have a separate call with the hiring manager of that role to discuss everything technical, discuss technical details like tech stack or maybe some upcoming projects or something like that, team specifics, all sorts of details you might be curious to know that could also help you to make a decision. And then it's really simple. If you accept the offer, then the onboarding process is initiated and you can start preparing for a job change. And these can be various things. This can be notice. You might want to hand in your notice in your current employer. You might consider relocation if this is applicable, if you're applying for a different location than where you live, and so on. And that's it. It's really simple. It's really simple when you think about it. So just apply or get in contact with us. If your CV matches our requirements, go through the online assessment. If you pass it, you are straight at the on-site interview. And if you pass it, we have an offer for you ready. So it can be quite fast. It's the timelines depend on you. So if you think you might want to practice first, or you need to maybe finish a project first at work, that's okay. We can wait. Just make sure that the communication is clear and you tell us clearly what do you think could be a potential timeline for this process. If you're looking to move fast, let's say you've got other interviews lined up, or if you're not really stressed about it and you can wait. It's important that both parties know. So I would say this is all from me. This was a very brief call, a brief video. But I would like to say thank you. And if you'd like to consider Amazon as your next career move, then please feel free to contact me directly. I typically have roles across multiple countries in EU. That would be typically we have software engineering roles across Poland, Germany, the UK, Ireland, about it, I would say. So if you're interested in any of these, just let me know, and I can point you out in the right direction. I can tell you what we have currently available. You can also add me on LinkedIn. I regularly post job vacancies that we currently have or what we are looking for. So if you want to stay updated, what are the options here in the EU, feel free to do that. Or there's also the final way you can, oops, you can submit your application through Amazon.jobs if you're looking for anything or if you don't want to talk to me. No, I'm joking. But yeah, that's also another way. So thank you everybody for your attention. I hope this was helpful, at least a little bit. If you require more information, you can go on Amazon.jobs, and in the top left corner, there are the three dots, the options. If you click that, you can see interviewing at Amazon, and there's plenty of information and resources that you can see there. So please feel free to do that if you'd like to know more. And if you'd like I said, if you'd like to hear more about current jobs and openings and see if you and your profile might be a good fit for us, then yes, drop me a message, drop me an email, and I'll be very happy to hear from you. Thank you very much and wish everyone a nice day. Bye.